Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
I am.
Today, we're going to be tackling a pretty fascinating subject.
Oh, yeah.
It's tricky, but fascinating. The ego.
Okay.
And our guide for this exploration is going to be Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth.
It's a great one.
Yeah, we're going to be dissecting his ideas about the ego, how it operates, and ultimately how we can break free from its grip.
Yeah, it's really all about sort of like, recognizing it and then moving beyond it.
Exactly. And for those of you who are familiar with A New Earth, think of this as a chance to revisit some key concepts and uncover some new layers of meaning.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are new to Tolle, this will be a great introduction to his perspective on the ego and its role in human suffering.
Exactly.
So let's get started.
Okay.
How does Tolle define the ego? I know it's not just about being arrogant or self-centered.
Right.
I know.
It's definitely more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
He describes the ego as a false sense of self, an illusion that's created by identifying with our thoughts, our emotions, our possessions, our roles.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're constantly building a fortress around this fragile sense of who we are, clinging to anything that reinforces that image.
And that clinging, that identification is where the trouble really starts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's when we run into problems.
Tolle argues that the ego is really the root of a lot of our suffering.
Makes sense.
Yeah, when we believe that we are our thoughts and emotions, we just get trapped in these cycles of reactivity and judgment and dissatisfaction.
Yeah, you get stuck.
Yeah, and we're constantly seeking that external validation, trying to bolster this fragile sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never ending.
Right.
This search for external validation is always there. The ego is always hungry.
It's insatiable, right?
For more.
Always wanting more possessions, more achievements, more recognition.
It's like trying to fill a bottomless pit.
Exactly. You can never quite get there.
Tolle talks about this really powerful anecdote. He encounters this angry woman.
Oh, I remember that story.
And her rage wasn't actually directed at him, but at her own internal turmoil, her own pain body.
Right.
It's such a vivid illustration of how the ego works, how we project our own unresolved pain and insecurities onto others.
Yeah, we do. We totally do.
And we create conflict and drama.
Yeah, unnecessary conflict and drama for sure.
It's like we're walking around wearing these distorted lenses, seeing the world through the filter of our own egoic narratives.
Totally. Yeah.
And those narratives are often rooted in fear and desire.
Mm-hmm.
The ego uses fear to keep us trapped in its grip, whispering anxieties and insecurities in our ear.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Don't take risks, you might fail.
Uh-huh.
Don't be vulnerable, you might get hurt.
Right, classic ego moves.
These kinds of things, right?
Exactly.
And at the same time, the ego's dangling these desires in front of us, promising happiness and fulfillment if we just achieve that next goal or acquire that next possession,
Always chasing that next thing, thinking it'll finally bring us happiness.
It's a constant push and pull.
It is. It's exhausting.
This relentless striving that never really leads to lasting satisfaction.
Never quite get in there.
It really makes you wonder, how does this ego even form? What are the building blocks of this illusion?
It's a good question. Where does it all begin? Well, Tolle suggests that the ego is largely shaped by our past conditioning.
Okay.
Our childhood experiences, the messages we internalize from society, the roles we've been assigned.
Right.
We identify with these experiences and create a narrative about who we are based on them.
So it's like we're building this identity, this sense of self, on a foundation of past experiences and these external influences.
Right, exactly.
But those things are always changing.
Yeah, they are. That's the paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ego seeks the solid, unchanging sense of self, but it's built on a foundation that's inherently fluid and impermanent, that creates this fundamental tension, this kind of unease that drives the ego's pursuit of more.
More.
Exactly. Always wanting more.
And all this time, our true nature, that deeper sense of self, is there underneath all of this.
It is. It's always there.
Beneath the surface of this egoic noise.
Yeah. Just waiting to be discovered.
It's like we have to clear away all the clutter to find it.
That's a great way to put it. Clearing away the clutter.
So how do we do that? How do we start to peel back the layers of the ego and discover that true nature?
Well, it's a journey for sure, not a quick fix.
Right.
But Tolle offers some really practical tools and practices that can help us along the way.
So what are some of those?
Well, one of the most powerful tools is simply awareness.
Okay.
By paying attention to our thoughts and emotions without judgment, we start to create a space between ourselves and the ego.
We become the observer.
Exactly, the observer, rather than getting swept away in that torrent of thoughts and emotions.
Watching them go by. And as we cultivate this awareness, we start to notice those patterns, right? The recurring thoughts, the habitual reactions, the ways in which it tries to control and manipulate our experience.
Yeah, the ego's tricks.
It's like shining a light on these unconscious patterns, bringing them into conscious awareness, where we can choose differently.
Absolutely. That's the key, that ability to choose differently.
So we're not just reacting, we're responding.
Exactly.
And Tolle really emphasizes the power of the present moment in freeing ourselves from the ego's grip.
The present moment is so important.
When we're fully present, we're no longer caught up in the mental chatter of the past or anxieties of the future. We're simply here now, experiencing life directly.
That's where true freedom lies.
But that's hard. Shifting our attention to the present moment can be incredibly challenging.
It is, especially in our fast-paced world.
Yeah, in this hyper-connected world.
There's always something vying for our attention.
Do you have any tips or techniques that has helped you cultivate presence in your own life?
Well, one practice that I find incredibly grounding is focusing on my breath.
Oh, yeah.
When I notice my mind racing or getting caught up in worries, I just gently bring my attention back to the sensation of my breath entering and leaving my body.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
Right.
But it's powerful.
It's like a reset button for the mind.
Exactly, bringing us back to the simplicity of being.
And Tolle also talks about the importance of inner body awareness.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not just about quieting the mind, but also tuning into the wisdom of the body.
The body holds so much wisdom.
Yeah.
It's constantly giving us feedback, signaling when we're out of alignment with our true nature.
So we can learn to listen to those signals.
Yes.
The tension in our shoulders, that tightness in our chest, the feeling of unease in our gut.
All those sensations are trying to tell us something.
Yeah, and we can use them as cues to bring ourselves back to the present moment.
Back to a place of greater awareness.
Yeah, it's about developing a more intimate relationship with ourselves.
It is.
Becoming more attuned to our inner landscape.
Absolutely.
And as we cultivate this inner awareness, we begin to notice those moments when the ego is trying to take over.
Right.
When it's whispering its stories of fear and desire.
Those sneaky little whispers.
Yeah.
We have to learn to recognize them.
That makes me think about the concept of the pain body.
Oh, yeah, the pain bar.
Which Tolle describes as this reservoir of accumulated emotional pain that we carry within us.
It's like a shadow self that feeds on negativity and drama.
And it can be so insidious, right? We might think we're making these conscious choices.
Right.
But often we're reacting from this pain body's wounded place, repeating old patterns.
We are. We get triggered.
Yeah.
And react from that wounded place.
And it has a radar for situations and people that will reactivate those old wounds.
It does. It knows how to push our buttons.
It's like it's seeking them out.
It is, in a way.
But Tolle offers some guidance on how to deal with this tricky character.
He does. He doesn't leave us hanging.
So how do we deal with it?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of becoming aware of the pain body.
Okay.
Both in ourselves and in others. That awareness is the first step in breaking the identification with it.
So shining a light on that shadow self.
Exactly.
And recognizing that's not who we really are.
That's right. It's not our true essence.
He also emphasizes the importance of not feeding the pain body.
Yeah, starving the beast, so to speak.
So how do we do that?
Well, it means becoming aware of those thoughts and situations that trigger it.
Okay.
And choosing not to engage with them.
Choosing to respond differently.
Exactly.
Breaking free from those habitual reactions.
It takes practice, but it's possible.
Yeah, and he encourages us to cultivate practices that support emotional healing.
Right.
Like mindfulness and forgiveness.
And inner body awareness.
Yeah, so many different tools.
There are, and they can be so helpful.
These practices can help us release those trapped emotions and create space for greater peace and well-being.
Yeah.
But before we delve into the pain body and that path to healing,
okay,
let's take a closer look at some of the other ways the ego shows up in our lives.
Yeah, let's do that.
We were talking about the ego's tendency to project its own insecurities and unresolved pain onto others.
Right.
Which makes me think about how the ego operates in relationships.
It's definitely a factor there.
Yeah. Tolle suggests that the ego thrives on conflict and drama.
It does. It loves a good story.
So even in our closest relationships, there's this undercurrent of ego at play.
Often. Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's often there.
It can be hard to spot.
We might find ourselves comparing, competing, trying to control our loved ones.
Trying to fit them into a box.
Yeah, rather than truly accepting them for who they are.
Exactly.
Tolle suggests that one of the keys to dismantling the ego in relationships is to become aware of our own projections.
Projections, yeah.
He talks about how we often project our own unresolved pain and insecurities onto our partners.
We do.
Friends, family members.
It's like we're seeing a distorted reflection of ourselves in them.
So how do we start to become aware of those projections? What are some of the signs that we might be projecting our own stuff onto others?
Well, one clue is when we have a really intense emotional reaction to something someone says or does.
Okay.
You know, if we find ourselves getting disproportionately angry or hurt or defensive, it's a sign there might be something deeper going on.
It's like our buttons are being pushed.
Right.
But the buttons belong to us.
Exactly, not to the other person.
Another sign of projection is when we're constantly trying to change or fix the other person.
Oh yeah, the fixer-upper syndrome.
It's like we're trying to mold them into our ideal image.
Rather than accepting them as they are.
It can be so tempting to do that, especially in romantic relationships.
Hmm.
We have this vision of the perfect partner.
Right.
And we try to force the other person into that mold.
But true intimacy requires letting go of that need for control.
And embracing the other person in their wholeness.
Imperfections and all.
It's about seeing beyond our own projections and meeting the other person with an open heart.
And an open mind.
Tolle also talks about how this need for enemies extends beyond our personal relationships.
It does. It goes much deeper than that.
He points out how this dynamic plays out in social divisions and political conflicts.
And on a global scale, with wars and terrorism.
It's sobering to think about how this seemingly small mechanism, the ego's need for an enemy, can have such far-reaching consequences.
It's a powerful force.
It is, and it makes you realize that the work of dismantling the ego is not just about personal growth.
Right.
It's also about creating a more peaceful and just world.
Absolutely.
So in a way, becoming aware of our own egos and learning to transcend those limiting patterns is not just an act of self-care.
It's an act of service.
To the world.
Exactly.
When we begin to see through the illusions of the ego, we naturally become more compassionate.
More understanding.
We're willing to connect with others from a place of shared humanity.
We see our interconnectedness.
Yeah, it's like we're shifting from a paradigm of separation and competition
to a paradigm of interconnectedness and collaboration.
Which has the potential to create ripple effects throughout our lives.
And throughout the world.
Speaking of shifting consciousness, Tolle talks about the ego's obsession with time.
Oh yeah, the ego loves time.
He suggests that the ego is constantly trapped in the past.
Replaying old hurts and regrets.
Or anxiously anticipating the future, worrying about what might happen.
Always caught up in those mental time loops.
And that preoccupation with time prevents us from fully experiencing the present moment.
Which is the only place where true joy and fulfillment can be found.
Right. We miss out on the richness and beauty of life because we're so caught up in the mental chatter of the past and the future.
We do. We let it slip away.
Tolle encourages us to dissolve this illusion of psychological time by recognizing that the present moment is all we ever have.
That's a powerful insight.
It is a challenging one to put into practice.
It is. Our minds are so conditioned to jump back and forth between the past and the future.
So how do we break free from that? How do we start to break free from that habitual pattern?
Well, one of the simplest but most effective practices is to bring our attention to our senses.
Our senses?
Yes. What are we seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting right now? By tuning into the sensory experience of the present moment, we anchor ourselves in the here and now.
It's like grounding ourselves in the physical reality of our bodies.
Exactly.
Rather than getting lost in the mental labyrinth of time.
That's a great way to put it.
And as we practice bringing our attention to the present moment, we start to notice that there's a richness and aliveness to experience.
There is.
That we often miss.
We do.
When we're caught up in our thoughts.
The colors seem brighter, the sounds clearer.
The sensations more intense.
Exactly.
And we start to notice that the present moment is always filled with possibilities. It's a space where we can choose to respond to life in new and creative ways.
Rather than being stuck in those old patterns.
Of reactivity and limitation. The present moment is where we can access our true power.
Yes.
Our creative potential.
Our ability to shape our lives.
And to contribute to the world in meaningful ways.
It's all there, waiting for us in the present moment.
But Tolle acknowledges that there are times when the pain of the past or the anxieties of the future can feel overwhelming.
Of course, those feelings are real.
He doesn't advocate for just ignoring those feelings, right?
No, not at all.
He encourages us to face those difficult emotions
With courage.
and compassion.
He talks about the importance of allowing ourselves to feel the pain fully,
Okay.
without judgment or resistance.
That sounds really challenging.
It can be.
Isn't there a risk that we'll just get swallowed up by those negative emotions?
Well, Tolle suggests that when we resist the pain, we actually give it more power.
We do.
We do. But when we allow ourselves to feel it fully, to acknowledge its presence without judgment, it starts to lose its grip on us.
It's like taking away its power
Exactly.
by shining a light on it.
The light of awareness.
And he talks about how the energy that was trapped in the pain body can actually be transmuted into presence,
Well, it can. It's like alchemy.
becoming fuel for our awakening.
It's a powerful transformation.
So it's not about getting rid of the pain body, but about transforming it.
Exactly.
That's a really profound idea.
It is.
That the very thing that causes us so much suffering can also be a source of our liberation.
It's all about how we relate to it.
Right, our perspective.
Our awareness.
But before we dive deeper into that,
Okay.
let's take a moment to explore another key aspect of Tolle's work, this idea that we are not our thoughts.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. It's a real mind bender.
It is, but it's so liberating once you grasp it.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it. It is a big one. It's a real head scratcher.
We were just talking about how the ego keeps us trapped in this illusion of time.
Right.
But Tolle also challenges another fundamental belief that many of us hold. This idea that we are our thoughts.
Oh, it's so deeply ingrained.
We identify so strongly with our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs.
It's like our whole sense of self is wrapped up in them.
Yeah.
But Tolle says, he suggests that these thoughts are just mental events.
Okay.
Fleeting and impermanent, like clouds passing through the sky of our awareness.
So if we're not our thoughts, then who are we? What's left? What's left when we strip away all of those layers of mental chatter?
That's the big question, isn't it? Like, who are we really?
Yeah.
Well, Tolle points us toward this thing, this experiencer, this consciousness that's aware of the thoughts but isn't defined by them. It's like we're stepping back from the screen of our minds.
Right.
And becoming aware of the space in which the thoughts are appearing.
And he calls this space consciousness.
Exactly.
And he suggests that it's from this spacious awareness that true freedom and joy emerge.
That's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
When we're identified with our thoughts, we're constantly being tossed and turned by the waves of the mind.
Right, we're at their mercy.
We are. It's exhausting.
Yeah. But when we connect with that deeper sense of awareness, we tap into a stillness
Okay.
and a peace that's always present,
Always there.
regardless of what's happening in our thoughts.
It's like finding a place of refuge within ourselves.
A sanctuary.
A place where we can observe the storms of the mind without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. We can weather any storm from that place.
And from that place of spacious awareness, we can start to relate to our thoughts differently.
Absolutely.
We can see them as just mental events.
Just passing through.
Without giving them so much power over us.
And we don't have to believe everything we think.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in those thought loops.
Oh, yeah. The mind can be a tricky place.
So it's not about trying to stop our thoughts.
No, not about suppressing them.
Or suppress them, but about changing our relationship to them.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective.
It's recognizing that we have a choice.
We always have a choice.
In how we respond to them.
That's the key. Remembering our power to choose. We can get caught up in them.
Right.
Believe every story they tell us. Or we can observe them with a sense of detachment, letting them come and go.
Without judgment or resistance.
That makes me think about non-resistance.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Which Tolle really emphasizes as a key to dissolving suffering.
Makes sense.
And it seemed to apply not only to our thoughts, but to all of our experiences in general.
It does. It's about accepting what is. Tolle suggests that much of our suffering comes from resisting what is.
Right, from wishing things were different.
Fighting against the natural flow of life.
And he's not suggesting that we become passive.
No, not at all.
Give up on our goals.
Right. It's not about resignation.
Okay.
But about recognizing that resistance only creates more pain.
We make things harder for ourselves.
We do. We add unnecessary suffering.
When we accept the present moment, even if it's challenging, we open ourselves to a deeper level of peace.
And understanding.
And from that place of acceptance, we can then respond to situations more skillfully and effectively.
Absolutely.
It's like aligning ourselves with the flow of life,
Yeah.
rather than trying to swim upstream against it.
It's a much smoother ride that way.
And that alignment with life is ultimately what Tolle is pointing us toward. He sees awakening as a process of aligning with our true nature.
Right, which is beyond the limitations of the ego.
Beyond the illusions of time and thought.
It's about connecting with that deeper sense of being.
That spacious awareness that's always present, always available to us.
It's our birthright. It's our birthright. We just have to remember it.
And it's from that place of connection that we can live our lives with greater purpose and meaning and joy.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
It's what we're all searching for in the end, isn't it?
I think so.
That sense of peace and fulfillment.
Exactly.
Well, this brings us to the end of our deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's work.
Oh, already.
I know it's flown by.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It really has been an incredible journey exploring these profound concepts and these practical tools for personal transformation.
Tolle's work is so rich, isn't it?
It is. It's always inspiring to revisit his ideas and see how they resonate with people from all walks of life.
It's timeless wisdom.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the mechanics of the ego to the path of awakening. But we've only scratched the surface.
We have. There's so much more to explore.
If this conversation has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to pick up a copy of A New Earth.
Yeah, give it a read.
And delve deeper into Tolle's teachings.
There's so much to discover.
And as you explore these ideas, remember that this journey of awakening, it's not about achieving some distant goal.
Right.
It's about embracing the present moment.
Cultivating awareness.
Connecting with that deeper truth of who you are.
It's an ongoing process.
It is. It's a lifelong journey.
But it's so worth it.
It is.
The rewards are immeasurable.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep awakening to the limitless possibilities within you.
And the world around you.
We'll see you soon.